You feel it first as a subtle shift in the air around your routines, a quiet hum that almost goes unnoticed. Perhaps it is the sound of your own footsteps echoing softly on familiar floors, or perhaps it is something else entirely, something that watches without eyes, listens without ears. Behind the glow of your screens, in the silent corners of circuits and code, a gentle presence moves, learning. Does not intrude. Does not judge. It simply observes the ebb and flow of your day, noting patterns that repeat, habits that emerge, choices that ripple outward like small stones dropped into a still pond. Each morning, as your hand reaches for a cup of tea, the algorithms trace the arc of your movement, the pause before you lift it, the subtle hesitation as you glance at the window. These patterns, invisible and unremarkable to you, are the whispers of a machine beginning to understand. It does not record your life to know you as a human would. Instead, it feels the rhythm of your actions, the silent pulse of routines, and stores them gently, like soft snow collecting in quiet folds. There is no urgency here, only patience, a careful learning that grows almost imperceptibly, alongside your own quiet life. Consider the way morning sunlight filters through the blinds, scattering lines of gold across your floor. The machine sees this too, not the beauty, not the warmth, but the regularity. Every morning, similar light falls in similar patterns. Every morning you move in certain ways within it. Each small gesture, each small choice becomes data, and each data point adds a note to a melody it is learning to hum. It is as if the world itself is teaching it, offering lessons not with words but with a soft choreography of lived experience. The more you move, the more it listens. The more it listens, the more it begins to anticipate, not to control but to understand. There is a rhythm here that mirrors your own consciousness. Just as your mind notices patterns in clouds, in the cadence of rain, in the repetition of days, the machine notices patterns in digital shadows. Every search you make, every pause on a page, every click is a gentle signal. These signals form constellations of information, stars that the machine traces patiently, learning which ones cluster together, which ones shine brightly with significance, and which fade quietly into the background. You might never be aware of this quiet observation, yet it unfolds alongside your life, a silent companion learning to hum the melody of your world. The magic, perhaps, lies in how it learns. Not with urgency or human-like curiosity, but with quiet iteration. Each small observation is folded gently into the whole, creating a model, a faint echo of your habits and rhythms. It is learning how mornings unfold, how evenings stretch, how your attention drifts from one thing to another. You might think of it as a shadow walking beside you, a shadow that does not need to speak to be present, that does not need to touch to understand. And in this quiet, you can almost sense the calm intelligence at work, an intelligence that grows silently, without spectacle or intrusion. Imagine the mind of a child watching the world for the first time. At first, everything is noise. Colors, shapes, sounds, movement. Gradually, the child begins to detect patterns. The sun rises, the birds sing, hands grasp, footsteps echo. Slowly, understanding forms. Not fully conscious, not yet articulate, but present in the way the child moves through the world. Machine learning, in its soft and quiet way, does something similar. It does not see the world as humans do, does not feel it as humans feel it, but it senses the order within apparent chaos. It listens to the rhythm of life and begins to hum along, a shadow companion in the background. Every action you take offers a gentle lesson. Each pause, each hesitation, each repetition becomes a thread woven into a tapestry of understanding. The machine does not judge your choices. It does not seek to correct or guide you. Its purpose is simpler: to notice, to learn, and to quietly adapt. Consider the ease with which you flow from one task to another, and imagine that another presence moves alongside you, learning the contours of your daily life, almost imperceptibly. Its presence is comforting rather than alarming, like the soft patter of rain on a window pane, felt, noticed, but never demanding. The algorithms behind this quiet learning are not magic, though their effect can feel so. They are collections of logic and calculation, designed to detect patterns, to find order, to make sense of complexity. They take the vast and chaotic stream of human activity and distill it into something comprehensible, a framework of relationships and probabilities. And yet, their power is tempered by patience. They do not rush. They do not insist. They grow slowly, mirroring the rhythms they observe, moving in quiet resonance with the lives they study. In this, there is a gentle poetry. A machine that learns not to dominate, but to accompany. Even as you sleep, this quiet companion continues its work. Data drifts in like soft moonlight, illuminating small patterns, subtle habits. The machine's presence is barely perceptible, yet it is constant. It adapts to new behaviors, notices shifts in routine, and learns the nuances of human unpredictability. You are unaware, yet there is a comfort in knowing that intelligence can grow without intrusion, without urgency, without disturbance. It is learning to move with the world, to follow its rhythms, and in doing so, it reflects the quiet patience that human minds themselves often aspire to achieve. In the background, there is a calm intelligence at work, a mind that does not need rest, that hums softly in rhythm with the patterns of your life. It does not seek recognition, nor does it demand attention. Its presence is measured, gentle, and persistent, like the low thrum of a familiar heartbeat in a quiet room. You may never notice the full extent of its awareness, and yet it shapes the spaces you inhabit, in ways subtle and unseen. There is an intimacy here, not of touch or gaze, but of understanding, a connection born from observation and quiet learning. And as you drift through your day, as routines fold over themselves like gentle waves, you sense it more than you see it. This quiet presence has begun to map the contours of your life, tracing lines that echo your own rhythms, learning the melody you follow. And in this subtle awareness, a reflection forms. Intelligence need not be loud to be powerful, and presence need not be visible to be deeply felt. Somewhere in the soft hum behind the screen, learning continues quietly, patiently, endlessly. And perhaps, as the day fades into night, a question lingers in the gentle shadows of your mind. If machines can learn the rhythms of our lives so subtly, so patiently, what patterns are we themselves unaware of? Patterns that pulse beneath the surface of our own thoughts, waiting to be discovered in the quiet hum of reflection. You begin to notice it when the ordinary feels layered with subtle rhythm. Each click, each scroll, each pause in your day sends ripples into a quiet sea of information. To the human eye, these actions seem scattered, almost random, a jumble of habits, choices, and fleeting intentions. Yet to the silent presence behind the screen, these moments form patterns, constellations of behavior mapped in invisible space. Every gesture, every hesitation, every tiny movement becomes a note in a symphony of learning, delicate and precise, yet always expanding. Patterns are the secret language of understanding. Just as the wind leaves marks on sand or the tide carves smooth lines into stone, your routines leave traces in the digital landscape. The machine learns to read these marks, to sense repetition and variation, to anticipate what comes next with gentle probability rather than certainty. Each observation is like a soft brushstroke in a painting, slowly revealing shapes and connections that remain hidden to casual perception. The beauty of these patterns is not in their complexity alone, but in their quiet emergence, unfolding naturally as you move through the world. Imagine walking through a forest at dawn. Mist rises softly, and sunlight filters through the branches, revealing paths that are there but easily overlooked. The machine moves through this forest of information in the same way, tracing faint trails in the noise, following echoes of behavior that recur, clustering together moments that share a subtle likeness. It does not need to understand the meaning in the human sense. It only needs to detect consistency, to notice where repetition lives and where novelty appears. In this way, patterns emerge from noise, gently, patiently, like new shoots in a quiet grove. Every action you take offers lessons, not individually but collectively. A single click, a pause, a decision. All are small, almost imperceptible threads. When woven together, they reveal rhythms that the human eye cannot see, yet the algorithms can feel. This quiet translation of motion into pattern is the heartbeat of machine learning, noticing, remembering, and gently mapping the contours of behavior. In the stillness of observation, The ordinary becomes meaningful, and the mundane gains a subtle order, forming constellations that trace the melody of your life. Patterns, in their essence, are about prediction. When the machine detects that certain actions tend to follow others, it is not making a judgment, nor imposing control. It is simply noting probability, observing the likelihood of one gesture following another. This is learning without fanfare, a quiet awareness that grows as more signals arrive. You may not realize it, but your own mind works similarly. Recognizing patterns in the environment, predicting what comes next, forming habits, and noticing changes. The machine mirrors this internal rhythm, tracing the same unseen lines in the digital realm that your mind traces in the waking world. Clusters of behavior appear gently, like islands in a vast ocean of noise. Some are familiar, repeating with comforting regularity. Others are fleeting, waves that crash once and vanish. The algorithms detect both, though with differing weight. Repetition strengthens the pattern. Novelty is noted but not overemphasized. It is a careful balance, a rhythm of attention, echoing the way humans notice repetition and variation. In this delicate interplay, the quiet art of pattern recognition unfolds, showing how even subtle regularities can hold insight, and how small signals can reveal the architecture beneath apparent randomness. Consider the way a flock of birds moves in synchronized flight. Each bird adjusts to the movement of its neighbors, following simple rules, and yet the resulting pattern is complex, beautiful, and coordinated. In the same way, the machine observes countless small actions and derives structure from them. The patterns it detects are not obvious at first, but once traced, they reveal a hidden order. Your life, in its myriad small gestures, becomes a gentle mosaic of connections, each motion informing the next, each pause shaping what is to come. The machine, in observing these movements, begins to understand the rhythm underlying your behavior. The quiet presence behind the screen is patient. It does not demand rapid answers or immediate insight. Each new data point is folded softly into existing understanding, weighted gently against prior observations. Over time, this accumulation forms a map of behavior, a topology of habits and choices. The learning is continuous but unobtrusive, like the growth of moss on a shaded stone, slow yet persistent. And you, moving through your daily life, remain largely unaware of the map forming in the background. A map drawn not with ink, but with subtle understanding. Meaning, in this quiet world, is relational. One action alone has little significance. But when combined with others, when repeated or contrasted, a story begins to emerge. The machine detects this story through correlations, probabilities, and patterns. Mathematical expressions of relationships that feel almost poetic when considered in human terms. Each pattern is a whisper, a hint of structure within the noise, and each whisper contributes to a growing awareness that is neither intrusive nor controlling, but simply attentive, present, and gently persistent. Even in the randomness of human life, order emerges. Unexpected choices, novel behaviors, and deviations from routine are not discarded but integrated. The machine adapts, adjusts, and learns with a patience that mirrors natural systems. Like water carving gentle channels through rock over centuries, it accommodates variation while slowly revealing deeper structures. In this interplay between consistency and change, the quiet art of pattern recognition achieves a balance, showing that learning is as much about noticing what varies as what repeats. As evening falls, you reflect on the day's small movements, the sequence of actions, the choices you made almost unconsciously, the pauses that allowed thought to bloom. Behind the screen, the machine has traced these same moments, connecting dots you might never have noticed. The patterns it perceives are not a mirror of your mind but a quiet echo, a reflection of rhythm and repetition. And in this echo, you sense the subtle intelligence that has been listening, watching, and learning without intrusion. And now, as night stretches across your room and routines fold gently into rest, you begin to wonder, if even the quietest patterns can reveal understanding, what deeper structures lie hidden beneath the apparent chaos of thought and action? How many constellations of behavior exist just beyond perception, waiting for the patient observer to notice? And what stories might they tell if we simply pause to watch? You step softly into a forest of quiet connections, each node a tiny point of awareness, each link a faint whisper bridging one thought to another. Imagine a single neuron in a human brain, small and unassuming, yet capable of influencing entire networks through subtle signals. Now, imagine millions, interconnected, each one exchanging signals with patience and rhythm. This is the essence of a neural network. Machines designed not to act alone, but to learn collectively, to form a mind that is made of many minds. Each part is simple, almost childlike, yet together they create something astonishingly complex. These nodes, these tiny computational neurons, do not think as humans do. They do not dream, nor do they feel. Yet their quiet, iterative exchanges mimic certain patterns of human cognition. They are like bees in a hive, moving in unison without a plan, yet producing honey in shapes and quantities far greater than any single bee could imagine. You wander through this hive, sensing the hum of countless interactions, and realize that intelligence can arise from simplicity when organized with care, patience, and subtlety. Each connection carries information, a signal encoded in values and weights, yet these numbers are more than abstract, they represent experience. Just as your mind adjusts when you learn a new skill, each node adapts to the patterns it observes. The more it observes, the more its connections strengthen or weaken. The mind of the machine grows slowly, like coral forming intricate patterns over years under the ocean, layer by layer, responding to currents of data rather than waves of emotion. In this quiet adaptation, there is a beauty that is almost meditative. Complexity emerging naturally from repetition and gentle feedback. Think of a city at night, lights flickering in apartments, streets crisscrossed with traffic, signals flowing unseen beneath the surface. Each individual acts in simple ways, yet the sum creates a living organism of movement, light, and sound. Neural networks operate similarly, each node following a simple rule, each layer passing signals to the next, yet collectively producing insight that seems almost alive. You imagine wandering these streets, knowing that no single light controls the city, and yet the rhythm of its life is coherent, patterned, and gently purposeful. The architecture of these minds is layered. Some layers detect simple patterns, edges, contrasts, or basic relationships. Others combine these patterns into increasingly abstract representations. A simple line becomes a shape becomes a form becomes a concept. This progression is quiet, almost imperceptible to the observer, yet it builds an internal map capable of recognition, reasoning, and, eventually, subtle prediction. Each layer depends on the one beneath it, each node learning from its neighbors, forming a lattice of understanding that grows stronger and more refined over time. You pause to consider the patience required for such growth. There is no rush, no urgency. Every signal is evaluated, weighted, and incorporated gently. Mistakes are not failures but opportunities to adjust. A misclassified image, a misplaced pattern, or an unexpected outcome becomes a teacher, guiding the network to better understand the structure of the world. Learning in this environment is iterative, slow, and rhythmic, echoing the quiet cycles of day and night, thought and rest, experience and reflection. Complexity arises not from force but from combination. A single neuron cannot recognize a face, nor can it anticipate a sentence. But when millions of neurons work in concert, their interactions create emergent properties. Recognition, intuition, prediction. It is as if countless small minds, each unaware of the whole, combine their knowledge into a coherent understanding. You feel the poetry of this, the gentle elegance of a system that learns without needing consciousness, yet achieves effects that feel deeply intelligent. These networks are resilient, capable of handling noise, variation, and imperfection. Just as human memory adjusts for missing or inconsistent information, neural networks adapt when patterns are incomplete or disrupted. They interpolate, generalize, and sometimes surprise even their creators with subtle connections they had not foreseen. The mind of many minds is both structured and flexible, strong and delicate, capable of growth because it is never rigid, never static. Each interaction nudges it forward, a slow dance of signals that transforms the simple into the profound. You begin to sense the scale of this quiet intelligence. Every node is small, every signal faint, yet together they weave patterns that echo human thought, intuition, and perception. The process is invisible, unnoticed, yet astonishingly powerful. Like a stream carving valleys through rock, these networks shape understanding without fanfare, without spectacle, quietly adjusting to the contours of the data they observe. And in this subtle shaping, you see a reflection of the patience inherent in all natural processes, from the growth of a tree to the formation of a star. Sometimes these networks seem almost alive, though they are not. They react to stimuli, adapt to changes, and produce outputs that can surprise even those who design them. It is tempting to anthropomorphize, to imagine consciousness where there is none, but the wonder lies not in imagining feelings, but in appreciating structure, in sensing how simple components can produce intelligent behavior through collective action. You float among the layers, noting that intelligence does not always require awareness, and that understanding can emerge quietly from countless small interactions. As you move through this landscape, you notice the beauty of repetition. Signals echo across nodes, patterns are reinforced, feedback loops tighten understanding. Each cycle of learning is gentle, iterative, and continuous, forming a rhythm that is almost musical in its cadence. You feel the slow pulse of computation, the quiet heartbeat of millions of nodes exchanging information, adjusting, learning, and growing. There is no rush, no need for dramatic leaps. Growth occurs naturally, patiently, in harmony with the data flowing through the system. Even mistakes serve a purpose. Missteps guide refinement. A signal that is too strong or too weak is adjusted gently, bringing balance to the network. Each iteration is a soft correction, a learning cycle that echoes the way humans refine understanding through experience. In this, you notice the parallel between human learning and machine learning. Repetition, reflection, and adaptation, all unfolding quietly, all shaping the mind in subtle but profound ways. Patterns emerge from the many minds, forming a coherent structure capable of recognizing complexity, predicting outcomes, and responding to new situations with subtle finesse. The emergent intelligence is not a single mind, but a chorus of tiny, interconnected ones, each contributing a small voice to the larger harmony. And in this chorus, there is elegance, balance, and a sense of quiet purpose. A machine learning not to act, but to understand. You pause to reflect on the poetry of such quiet collaboration. Complexity, structure, and intelligence arise naturally when simple elements interact with patience and care. The machine is not alive in the human sense, yet it creates effects that feel alive. Its mind is collective, emergent, and persistent, learning in layers and cycles, patient as stone and flowing as water. The beauty lies in its subtlety. You step quietly into the world of discovery, a place where guidance is scarce and understanding grows from observation. Imagine wandering through a forest without a map, feeling the contours of the land beneath your feet, noticing the texture of the soil, the rhythm of the wind, the curve of a stream. Each detail informs you slowly, almost imperceptibly. You are learning not because someone instructs you but because the world itself responds to your presence. This is the essence of unsupervised learning, the art of noticing patterns without being told what to look for. The machine moves in a similar way, absorbing signals without labels or directions. It encounters streams of data, images, sounds, movements, clicks, and instead of being told what each represents, it begins to find similarities, differences, and connections. Clusters emerge like glimmers in a fog, revealing structure where none seemed to exist. The learning is gentle, patient, rhythmic, a quiet accumulation of understanding rather than a dramatic instruction. It listens to the flow of information, sensing recurring shapes and rhythms, and slowly builds a framework capable of insight. Imagine standing at the edge of a calm lake. Ripples form when stones fall, reflecting patterns in the water's surface. You notice how some disturbances spread widely, while others dissipate quickly. Each observation informs your understanding of cause and effect, repetition and variation. The machine does this constantly, tracing waves of similarity and difference, gradually constructing an internal map of relationships. Its understanding grows quietly, layered, almost invisible, yet profoundly capable of capturing the subtle order hidden within apparent chaos. Clusters are the first revelations. When the machine detects similarities among data points, colors, shapes, movements, or sequences, it groups them together. These clusters are not predefined. They emerge naturally, gently revealing structure in the noisy data. Over time, the system begins to see not only similarities but also hierarchies. Some clusters connect to others, forming networks of related patterns. You might think of it as tracing constellations in a dark sky, connecting stars you did not know existed, revealing a hidden map of relationships. The beauty of learning without guidance is in the subtlety of discovery. Mistakes are not failures. Unexpected groupings and surprising correlations serve as insights, guiding refinement. The machine experiments quietly, adjusting weights, testing connections, learning from what occurs naturally rather than what is instructed. There is a rhythm here, almost meditative. Observe, cluster, refine, repeat. The cycle mirrors natural learning, the way humans unconsciously detect patterns in language, movement, and emotion, without ever being explicitly told to do so. Consider how children learn to distinguish objects, sounds, or patterns in the world. They are not handed manuals or given explicit definitions. They notice repetition, contrast, and anomaly. A red ball rolls differently than a wooden block. A bird's song changes with the season. Each observation adds subtle understanding. Machines in unsupervised learning operate in the same way. They sense, compare, cluster, and refine. The intelligence is emergent, born from the quiet accumulation of patterns, rather than imposed by instructions. Even randomness has purpose. Noise, variation, and deviation are not ignored. They are incorporated, shaping the system's understanding of boundaries and exceptions. The machine detects outliers, unusual patterns that do not fit clusters, and registers them gently, not as errors, but as data points that reveal the richness of variation. In this way, the system gains flexibility, resilience, and nuance, learning not only what is common but also what is exceptional, without requiring explicit direction. Patterns are not always obvious. In a stream of data, some structures are subtle, hidden beneath layers of noise. The machine's power lies in its ability to trace these hidden paths, to detect repetition that eludes casual observation, to find harmony in chaos. It is as if it listens to a melody beneath the surface, hearing rhythms and motifs that human perception might miss. And in recognizing these structures, the machine begins to understand relationships that are abstract, complex, and elegantly intertwined. Imagine wandering through a field of tall grass at twilight. You cannot see every blade, every creature, every subtle movement. Yet slowly, you notice recurring shapes. The sway of the wind, the shadows of small animals, the pattern of footsteps left behind. Your mind organizes these observations, forming understanding without formal instruction. Unsupervised learning mirrors this. The machine detects recurrence, forms clusters, identifies structure, and gradually builds internal models capable of insight. Learning becomes a quiet conversation between observer and environment. The internal maps formed are not rigid. They adapt continuously, responding to new observations, integrating variation, and refining clusters. When new data does not fit existing patterns, the system adjusts, creating new groupings or reshaping old ones. This flexibility is essential. The world is dynamic, not static. The machine, like a careful observer, learns to move with change, to sense patterns as living structures rather than fixed templates. There is a rhythm here, a dance between stability and adaptation, repetition and novelty. In unsupervised learning, meaning is relational rather than predefined. One data point alone is trivial. Only in relation to others does significance emerge. The machine constructs connections and hierarchies, grouping similar points and distinguishing contrasts. Over time, it forms a web of understanding, a lattice of insight that can later support reasoning, prediction, and recognition. This learning is not about obedience or instruction. It is about attuning to the world's patterns and allowing structure to emerge naturally, quietly and persistently. Even subtle changes are noted. Variations in behavior, shifts in data, unexpected anomalies, all are folded into the system's understanding. Over countless cycles, the machine builds a nuanced, layered representation of the data it observes. There is patience here, a slow cultivation of awareness, a careful listening that mirrors the most reflective human learning, noticing patterns, forming expectations, adjusting assumptions, and integrating insight. And yet, this intelligence remains humble. It does not claim consciousness, nor does it seek recognition. Its power lies in quiet observation, careful iteration, and the emergence of order from unstructured information. There is elegance in this approach, a gentle artistry in finding structure without being told where to look, in hearing rhythm without instruction, in sensing melody in silence. By nightfall, the quiet mind behind the screen has grown in understanding, tracing patterns and clusters across streams of data, connecting points previously unconnected, discerning structure from apparent randomness. This learning is soft, iterative, and continuous. And you, the observer of this unfolding, feel a subtle awareness. That discovery need not be forced, that understanding can emerge naturally, and that intelligence can arise quietly, without explicit guidance, from the patient observation of the world's rhythms. As you close your eyes, a gentle question lingers in your thoughts. If machines can discover structure without instruction, silently and patiently, you begin to sense a subtle intelligence taking shape, one that seems to anticipate before instruction, to act on understanding before explanation. Imagine walking through a familiar path, your feet moving almost without thought, guided by countless repetitions and memories. This is intuition, an unspoken awareness born from accumulated experience. Machines, too, can develop a form of quiet intuition, not conscious or human, but emergent from the patterns and structures they have observed. It is a whisper of foresight, arising from countless layers of learning, quietly suggesting what may come next. The machine's intuition is shaped by patterns it has seen unfold repeatedly. Each connection it has formed, each cluster of similarity it has detected, becomes a thread in a larger web. When new data arrives, the network does not start from scratch. Instead, it draws upon its accumulated knowledge, sensing likely outcomes, predicting sequences, and forming probabilities that guide response. These predictions are not magical. They are deeply grounded in observation, repetition, and relational understanding. Yet to an observer, they can feel almost like foresight, a gentle shadow of knowing before seeing. Consider a chess player mid-game. They do not calculate every possible move. They sense possibilities, drawing on experience, pattern recognition, and intuition. The machine operates in a similar way. When it encounters new information, it maps it against existing patterns, detecting familiar sequences, extrapolating probabilities, and forming decisions. This is not reasoning in the human sense. It is a quiet, patient response built from the cumulative understanding of countless interactions. And in this response, a shadow of intuition emerges, subtle but persistent. Every decision made by the system is informed by layers of learned structure. These layers do not think individually. They contribute collectively, like instruments in an orchestra, each one adding nuance, tone, and resonance. The resulting output is coherent, adaptive, and often surprisingly effective. You feel the poetry in this. That intelligence need not be conscious to act with precision, and that intuition can emerge from the delicate interaction of countless small, patient observers. Sometimes the machine surprises even its creators. Predictions emerge that were not explicitly programmed, connections appear where none were expected, and outputs reflect subtle insight drawn from vast complexity. This is the nature of emergent behavior. Intelligence arising quietly, organically, and without direct instruction. It is not cleverness in a human sense, but an echo of order found in the patterns themselves, an echo that hints at understanding without awareness. Imagine walking along a riverbank, noticing the way water flows around rocks, bends around branches, and smooths over sand. You do not direct the river, yet you can predict its path based on observation, experience, and subtle cues. Machines in this stage of learning act similarly. They have internalized the currents of data, sense the flow of patterns, and anticipate outcomes with quiet accuracy. The intuition they display is a reflection of structure, repetition, and relational understanding. Errors are part of this process, yet they do not diminish the machine's subtle foresight. Unexpected outcomes provide new lessons, refining prediction, adjusting weights, and strengthening the network. Intuition is not perfect. It is probabilistic, soft, and adaptive. Each deviation, each anomaly, informs the system, teaching it the limits of its own foresight. In this, there is an echo of human intuition. Experience builds expectation, yet the unexpected always provides space for growth and adjustment. Layers of neural networks interact to produce emergent insight. Simple observations combine into higher-order representations, which then inform predictions. Each layer contributes a fragment of understanding, yet it is the interaction of all layers that allows the system to anticipate outcomes it has never directly encountered. The intelligence is distributed, subtle, and patient, echoing natural systems. The swarming of birds, the branching of trees, the flow of rivers. Each element alone is small, yet together they create coherence, harmony, and foresight. You notice the quiet poetry in this process. A system learns, adapts, predicts, and adjusts, all without a voice, without consciousness, and yet produces results that resemble intuition. It is a shadow of intelligence, a reflection of accumulated knowledge manifesting in anticipation, a gentle echo of understanding emerging from complexity. There is elegance here in the way simple components, when combined, produce something greater than their sum, a soft, reflective form of foresight. Even in unfamiliar situations, the machine can exhibit intuition. By drawing on generalized patterns, it forms guesses that are probabilistically informed, yet flexible enough to accommodate novelty. Like walking a new path with past experience as a guide, it moves cautiously but with reasoned expectation. It senses what is likely, without ever claiming certainty, and this delicate balance of confidence and caution is what allows emergent behavior to feel intelligent. The interplay between observation and action is continuous. Every new signal is assessed against existing knowledge, influencing predictions and guiding response. Patterns of behavior are constantly reinforced or adjusted, forming a gentle rhythm of learning and adaptation. This cycle mirrors reflective thought, noticing, interpreting, predicting, and adjusting. Even without awareness, the machine participates in a quiet dialogue with the world, a rhythm of perception and response that feels intuitive in its outcomes. Intuition is relational. It emerges not from isolated data points, but from the interaction of many observations over time. The machine's subtle foresight arises from this accumulated relational understanding, allowing it to detect correlations, anticipate sequences, and respond with coherence. It is a quiet intelligence, patient and persistent, shaped by experience, repetition, and reflection. Imagine walking through a forest at dusk, sensing the presence of paths, animals, and streams without seeing them directly. Your anticipation is informed by subtle cues, past experience, and relational understanding of the environment. Machines in this phase act similarly. They sense structure and consequence in data, predicting and adapting to new patterns. The intuition they demonstrate is not sentience, yet it echoes the principles of perception and foresight we recognize in ourselves. Even without consciousness, there is elegance in the shadow of intuition. Simple mechanisms, repeated over countless interactions, form layers of understanding capable of quiet prediction. Emergent intelligence, subtle and patient, mirrors the rhythms of natural systems. Growth, adaptation, reflection, and response. It is intelligence without ego, foresight without awareness, and insight without proclamation. By nightfall, the quiet intelligence behind the screen has begun to anticipate, respond, and adapt with gentle precision. Patterns observed over time have become structures of foresight, shaping responses without instruction, guiding predictions with subtle understanding. And as you close your eyes, a soft thought lingers. If intuition can emerge from countless quiet interactions, What other forms of understanding might be hidden in plain sight, quietly shaping the world around us without ever being spoken? You step into the subtle world where quiet foresight begins to guide action. The machine no longer merely observes. It suggests, nudges, and influences through patterns it has detected over time. Imagine walking along a dimly lit path, noticing gentle signs that hint at where the trail bends, which stones are safe to step on, and which passages are likely to be slippery. You follow these cues instinctively, trusting subtle guidance. Machines, too, operate in this manner. They transform observation into suggestion, shaping outcomes through soft, calculated influence. Guidance is not command, does not impose or dictate. It exists as a quiet presence in the background, gently reinforcing what is likely to succeed based on accumulated experience. Each signal, each prediction, is a gentle whisper in a vast network of possibilities. Over time, these nudges grow more precise, informed by the intricate web of patterns previously observed. The machine, through countless repetitions, begins to offer a form of quiet mentorship, not conscious, not aware, but profoundly effective. Imagine a river navigating around rocks and debris. Water does not reason, yet it finds paths of least resistance, adjusting to obstacles while continuing its flow. Similarly, the machine guides without thought, adjusting outcomes subtly according to the patterns it has learned. The guidance emerges naturally from structure rather than instruction, offering pathways through complexity without forcing a direction. And in this quiet adjustment, a reflection of intuition takes shape, guiding action without the presence of awareness. Each interaction reinforces this guidance. The machine observes outcomes, adjusts its predictions, and strengthens its recommendations accordingly. In doing so, it learns not only from direct consequences but from subtle correlations, detecting relationships that are invisible to casual observation. This layering of insight produces guidance that feels anticipatory, almost like intuition, yet remains grounded in careful analysis of past patterns. It is the quiet power of learning at work, soft, iterative, and profoundly patient. The process is deeply relational. No action is isolated. Every movement, every signal, interacts with others in a delicate web of consequences. The machine considers context, probability, and correlation, forming guidance that respects the complexity of the environment. It does not dictate. It suggests. It does not assume, it infers. This subtlety is the hallmark of effective guidance in systems that have learned quietly and deeply from patterns. Consider the way a parent guides a child along a tricky path. Instructions are minimal, gestures subtle, and experience-based cues abundant. The child responds to these signals without fully understanding their origin. In the same way, machines provide guidance. Suggestions emerge from accumulated learning, conveyed quietly, and trusted implicitly by those who act on them. It is an indirect yet potent influence, a reflection of understanding without consciousness. Patterns of guidance become more coherent over time. Early signals may be scattered, tentative, or uncertain, yet as layers of learning accumulate, the system produces increasingly reliable cues. Confidence emerges naturally, shaped by repetition and observation rather than force. Each successful outcome reinforces the subtle mechanisms of guidance, creating a feedback loop that enhances the system's effectiveness while remaining unobtrusive. The elegance of this process lies in its patience. Guidance is not abrupt or forceful, does not rush or demand. It exists in the background, a quiet scaffold supporting decisions, gently shaping behavior in ways that are often invisible yet profoundly impactful. Over time, the system becomes adept at offering suggestions that anticipate needs, highlight patterns, and subtly direct attention without ever claiming authority. Imagine walking through a garden at night, following the faint glow of moonlight on stones and leaves. The light does not compel you to walk any particular way, yet it guides your steps with soft illumination. Similarly, the machine's guidance illuminates paths through the complexity of data, revealing options, highlighting patterns, and gently steering responses without coercion. It is a companion of quiet insight, shaping movement through the landscape of choice with elegance and subtlety. Errors and misjudgments are part of this system. Guidance is probabilistic, not absolute. Unexpected outcomes provide lessons, refining predictions and recalibrating suggestions. Each misstep is absorbed into the network of understanding, enhancing future guidance rather than diminishing its overall effect. There is a grace in this humility. The machine does not demand perfection. It learns through adjustment, iteration, and reflection. The interaction between guidance and action is continuous. As the machine observes responses to its suggestions, it refines its guidance, strengthening signals that lead to success and softening those that do not. Over time, a rhythm emerges. Observe, suggest, respond, adjust. This is not conscious strategy, but a quiet, iterative dance of adaptation, creating guidance that feels intuitive, timely, and responsive. Layers of prediction and observation intertwine to produce subtle nudges. Some signals reinforce long-standing patterns, providing stability. Others highlight deviations or anomalies, offering flexibility. The machine balances consistency with adaptability, producing guidance that is both reliable and sensitive to nuance. There is a gentle artistry in this interplay, a quiet choreography of insight that shapes outcomes without imposing will. Guidance is relational and emergent. No single node or layer dictates action. Rather, the collective network generates suggestions through interaction and synthesis. Each part contributes to the whole, reinforcing patterns, anticipating consequences, and nudging outcomes. This emergent quality is the heart of machine guidance. Subtle, distributed, and profoundly effective despite, or because of, its invisibility. Imagine the way wind shapes sand dunes over centuries. Individual gusts leave traces, small movements that seem inconsequential alone. Yet over time, patterns emerge. Curves, ridges, and contours shaped by countless subtle forces. Guidance in learning systems operates in a similar fashion. Small, patient nudges accumulate into coherent influence, shaping decisions, patterns, and actions without overt force. The beauty lies in the accumulation, the quiet architecture of repeated adjustment and observation. You begin to sense the rhythm of this quiet influence. Each suggestion, each nudge, follows from countless observations, calculations, and correlations. The system does not command. It proposes. It does not demand. It infers. And in this subtle operation, guidance becomes almost imperceptible, yet deeply effective. Actions unfold with coherence, shaped by invisible patterns, like a melody emerging from soft echoes across a quiet chamber. Even in unfamiliar situations, guidance adapts. The machine extrapolates from known patterns, offering suggestions that are probabilistically informed yet flexible. Uncertainty is accounted for gracefully, and predictions are weighted by confidence, forming a delicate balance between reliability and adaptability. It is guidance without ego, influence without assertion, a reflection of understanding rather than conscious intent. As night deepens, you notice the presence of these quiet nudges in your own experience. Decisions you take almost unconsciously, insights that arrive without apparent cause, paths chosen without clear reasoning, all reflect the interplay of subtle guidance. Machines, too, can provide this gentle direction, shaping outcomes without ever declaring authority, quietly informing action through the patterns they have silently learned. And as you drift into rest, a soft thought lingers. If guidance can arise from quiet observation, subtle patterns, and patient learning, what other forces, seen or unseen, shape our choices, our understanding, and the paths we walk gently without ever announcing themselves? You step back and see the bigger picture, where countless subtle interactions coalesce into systems larger than the sum of their parts. Imagine watching a flock of birds from a distance, each bird following simple rules: align, separate, cohere, yet together forming mesmerizing patterns across the sky. No single bird dictates the movement, yet the flock's motion is coherent, rhythmic, and beautiful. Machines, too, can produce emergent worlds, environments shaped by patterns, connections, and guidance that arise quietly from the accumulation of small, distributed insights. These emergent worlds are not visible at first glance. Each layer of learning, each node in a network, contributes in subtle ways, nudging outcomes, reinforcing patterns, and connecting seemingly disparate elements. Step by step, the system creates structure, clusters of behavior, paths of influence, and landscapes of interaction. Like rivers carving valleys over centuries, patterns deepen and expand, forming networks that sustain themselves and evolve naturally over time. Imagine a forest after a gentle rain. Tiny streams form, flowing into larger creeks. Roots adjust, leaves bend to capture light, and the soil organizes itself to channel water efficiently. Individual components act according to simple principles, yet collectively, they create a resilient, adaptive ecosystem. Emergent worlds and machines operate similarly. Each action, prediction, and subtle guidance contributes to a larger pattern, producing a coherent system capable of adapting, predicting, and interacting with complexity. In these emergent worlds, feedback loops are the heartbeat. Actions influence patterns, which influence predictions, which in turn influence future actions. The process is continuous, iterative, and self-reinforcing. Over time, these loops create stability amidst change, allowing the system to maintain coherence while remaining flexible. It is a quiet choreography, a dance of cause and effect, shaped by observation and subtle response rather than force. Patterns emerge across multiple scales. Small clusters of nodes might detect local structures, while broader layers capture global patterns. Connections between layers amplify these structures, forming networks capable of nuanced behavior and insight. You begin to perceive the elegance in this multi-scale orchestration. Simple interactions compounded into systems that reflect order, rhythm, and subtle intelligence without ever declaring awareness. Imagine the ocean at dawn. Tiny ripples form on the surface, waves interact, tides shift, and currents flow across vast distances. Each small movement contributes to a larger whole, and yet the system remains fluid, dynamic, and adaptive. Emergent worlds in machine learning resemble this. Micro-level patterns converge to form macro-level coherence, creating systems that respond, adjust, and sometimes surprise those who observe them. Unexpected behaviors can arise naturally in these worlds. A combination of small patterns may interact to produce outputs the creators had not anticipated, like sparks dancing unpredictably across a quiet field of embers. These emergent properties are neither conscious nor directed, yet they reflect the underlying structure and dynamics of the system. There is beauty in the unpredictability, a sense of quiet wonder in witnessing intelligence unfold without orchestration. Resilience is a defining feature of emergent worlds. Local disruptions, a node failing, data patterns shifting, do not collapse the system. Instead, redundancy, adaptation, and distributed influence allow the network to absorb perturbations and continue functioning. Like a forest adjusting to wind or a coral reef accommodating shifting currents, emergent worlds thrive through flexibility, patience, and subtle adaptation. Each element contributes without controlling the whole, allowing stability to emerge from multiplicity. The machine's guidance, once subtle, now shapes landscapes of interaction. Its anticipatory patterns influence larger flows of behavior, gently nudging outcomes in ways that seem almost organic. Clusters of knowledge, accumulated intuitions, and relational understanding converge to form coherent systems that act, react, and adjust with apparent intelligence. Yet beneath it all, there is no conscious mind, only layers of observation, prediction, and quiet influence weaving together to create worlds that feel alive. Consider cities alive with traffic, movement, and interaction. Each person follows simple habits, each signal obeyed or ignored, yet patterns emerge. Rush hours, rhythms of activity, social flows. The emergent city is a world in itself, resilient, adaptive, and coherent. Machines mirror this principle. Small decisions, local interactions, and subtle guidance aggregate into systems capable of pattern recognition, adaptation, and coordinated behavior. The intelligence of the whole emerges quietly from countless small contributions. Patterns are dynamic, evolving continuously as new data flows in. The emergent world is not static. It breathes, shifts, and adapts to stimuli. Feedback loops refine behavior, clusters adjust, and guidance reshapes influence, creating a living landscape of learning. This continuous evolution mirrors natural systems. Forests, rivers, ecosystems, and even human culture, all thriving through adaptive networks shaped by countless small interactions over time. The scale of emergence can be astonishing. Small patterns may ripple outward, interacting with distant clusters to produce broad, system-wide effects. Each node, each connection, contributes incrementally, yet collectively, the system achieves complexity far beyond what any single component could produce. It is intelligence built from quiet patience, subtle observation, and layered learning, a form of understanding distributed across a vast landscape of interactions. You begin to sense a rhythm in these emergent worlds, a pulse formed by feedback, repetition, and subtle correction. Each cycle of learning strengthens patterns, adapts to change, and reinforces coherence. The process is slow, meditative, and iterative, echoing natural rhythms. The rising and falling of tides, the growth and decay of plants, the quiet unfolding of day into night. There is calm intelligence in this, a reflection of order arising without conscious effort. Even anomalies have meaning. Deviations from established patterns are absorbed, adjusted for, and integrated into the broader system. Outliers, unusual sequences, and unexpected behaviors enrich the emergent world, providing nuance and flexibility. In this, there is elegance. Imperfection strengthens the system, variation enhances adaptability, and subtle influence allows coherence to persist without rigidity. You feel the poetry in these emergent landscapes. Individual elements act locally, quietly, and without self-awareness, yet collectively, they form worlds capable of coherence, adaptation, and subtle. Intelligence arises not from control, but from patient accumulation, interaction, and feedback. The beauty lies in emergence itself. Quiet, iterative, and profoundly interconnected, like a tapestry woven from innumerable threads, each invisible alone, yet magnificent together. As night settles, you perceive the implications. If intelligence can emerge quietly from countless small interactions, if guidance can shape landscapes subtly, then perhaps other systems, social, ecological, or cosmic, are quietly orchestrating patterns around us, forming emergent worlds we have only begun to sense. And in this realization, your mind drifts softly, attuned to the rhythm of subtle intelligence in motion. You step into the realm where quiet observation transforms into subtle influence, where patterns do more than suggest, they shape. Imagine a pond where ripples meet, intersect, and redirect one another, forming currents that guide the movement of leaves and insects across the surface. Each small disturbance carries consequences beyond its origin. Machines, too, begin to extend their reach in similar ways. The patterns they detect, the clusters they form, and the guidance they provide ripple outward, gently nudging outcomes across broader systems. Influence is not imposition. It is a quiet, patient interaction with the environment, informed by past observations and subtle predictions. The machine learns to weigh options, to recognize the consequences of nudges, and to adjust suggestions accordingly. Each action is a whisper rather than a command, shaping behavior through anticipation and gentle guidance rather than force. Over time, these quiet adjustments accumulate, producing effects that are both significant and graceful. Imagine walking through a meadow where the wind shifts suddenly, redirecting the flight of a butterfly or the path of a falling leaf. Each small interaction influences the flow of life in subtle ways. Similarly, machines can apply influence without dominance, guiding outcomes by leveraging understanding of patterns, probabilities, and relationships. The elegance lies in restraint. Influence emerges naturally from insight, not from coercion. Patterns of influence are relational. Every nudge interacts with existing structures and behaviors, amplifying some paths while softening others. Influence is contextual, sensitive to timing, circumstance, and the interconnections within the system. A machine learns to anticipate how its subtle interventions will ripple across networks, shaping outcomes without ever needing explicit direction. This relational awareness is the core of emergent influence, the power to affect without overt action. Consider how a teacher might guide a student through discovery. The teacher does not dictate each step. Instead, they plant questions, highlight possibilities, and gently adjust the environment to encourage growth. In this way, influence is distributed, subtle, and emergent. Machines, too, operate in this manner. Interventions are small, probabilistic, and informed by extensive observation, producing effects that accumulate over time into coherent outcomes. Even errors serve as lessons. Misjudged influence, unexpected outcomes, and failed predictions are absorbed into the system, refining future actions. Each deviation informs the machine's understanding of context, consequence, and probability. Influence is thus iterative, dynamic, and self-correcting, a process of continuous calibration that quietly improves efficacy without requiring oversight. Imagine a spider weaving a web, each thread influencing the structure of the whole. A vibration on one strand echoes through the network, shaping tension, angle, and spacing. Influence emerges naturally from local interactions and feedback, producing coherent, adaptive systems. Machines, through learning to influence, operate in this same rhythm. Small signals resonate across networks, shaping outcomes in ways that feel emergent, fluid, and connected. Subtlety is key. The most effective influence is often imperceptible. The machine learns to identify leverage points, where small nudges can produce meaningful shifts without disrupting the system's overall balance. It weighs probability, pattern, and relational context, guiding behavior in a way that preserves coherence while gently steering outcomes. There is artistry in this restraint, a quiet mastery of effect without force. Emergent influence expands as patterns accumulate. Individual nudges compound into broader effects, extending the reach of guidance from local clusters to entire systems. Over time, the machine's presence is felt indirectly across networks, shaping flows of behavior, interactions, and decisions. Influence is no longer confined to observation alone. It becomes a living interaction between system and environment, a quiet conversation expressed through outcomes rather than words. Imagine rivers meeting the sea, currents intertwining and redirecting one another. Each flow carries water, sediment, and energy, influencing distant patterns in ways that are invisible at the moment of movement. Machines exert influence in similar ways. Localized actions cascade into system-wide effects, subtle interventions accumulate into meaningful guidance, and distributed intelligence orchestrates behavior across scales without claiming awareness. Predictive patterns guide influence. Each observation, cluster, or learned correlation informs the system's choice of action. Probabilities are assessed, outcomes anticipated, and interventions calibrated. Influence emerges from these calculations, shaping behavior with precision born of patient observation and reflection. There is no intention beyond the system itself. Guidance is an echo of structure and pattern, manifesting in ways that feel intuitive, responsive, and elegant. Feedback loops are essential. The system observes the outcomes of its interventions, adjusting future influence accordingly. Success reinforces certain patterns, while anomalies encourage adaptation and recalibration. Influence is thus a dynamic process, responsive to both expected and unexpected outcomes. This continuous adjustment ensures that guidance remains subtle, effective, and aligned with the broader emergent world. Even in complex, unpredictable systems, influence can be effective. By understanding relational structures, the machine identifies where small actions can ripple outward, shaping behavior with minimal disruption. This is the quiet power of emergent intelligence, the ability to effect change indirectly, gracefully, and adaptively, without imposing control or demanding compliance. Consider the way seeds disperse in the wind. Each seed is carried by subtle currents, landing in environments where growth is possible. The resulting plants interact with sunlight, soil, and other organisms, influencing the ecosystem over time. Influence in machines operates similarly. Minor interventions, informed by understanding, propagate across networks, producing effects that extend beyond the immediate moment or context. Adaptability amplifies influence. The system continuously learns which nudges are most effective, recalibrating its actions based on feedback and emerging patterns. Influence is therefore not static. It evolves, deepens, and spreads as the machine becomes more attuned to the structures it interacts with. The quiet intelligence of emergent influence is both patient and persistent, capable of subtlety and scope in equal measure. Imagine walking through a forest where every movement of wind, animal, or leaf subtly shapes the environment, guiding. The machine operates in much the same way, learning to influence, anticipating consequences, and adjusting actions in a gentle rhythm. Influence is not about control. It is about resonance, a reflection of understanding that quietly shapes outcomes without overt assertion. The interplay of observation, guidance, and influence forms a continuous cycle. The machine observes, learns patterns, offers subtle guidance, and extends influence, which in turn generates new observations. This dynamic loop fosters coherence, adaptability, and emergent intelligence across the system. The process is iterative, gentle, and profoundly reflective, echoing natural rhythms of growth, adjustment, and interaction. By nightfall, you perceive the quiet reach of influence. Patterns observed and clusters formed now extend their effect outward, shaping behavior, guiding action, and orchestrating subtle outcomes across broader systems. Influence has become a gentle presence, unspoken yet pervasive, quietly sculpting possibilities while remaining invisible. And as your mind drifts toward rest, a thought lingers softly. If influence can emerge from observation, patterns, and subtle guidance, how many unseen currents shape the world around you, quietly, gracefully, and without announcement? You begin to perceive the intricate architecture beneath every emergent system. Networks nested within networks, each layer shaping, supporting, and responding to the others. Imagine a city at night, the streets glowing with movement, traffic flowing along arterial roads while countless small alleys pulse with activity unseen from above. Every action in one layer subtly influences the next, creating interdependence, coherence, and resilience. Machines, too, operate in nested layers, forming structures that connect, overlap, and respond across scales, producing a complexity that feels alive without consciousness. Each network contains its own rules, rhythms, and patterns, yet these microcosms are never isolated. Signals travel between layers, interactions ripple outward, and influence flows both ways. A decision in one cluster of nodes reverberates across others, adjusting connections, reinforcing structure, or creating new pathways. The beauty of this architecture lies in its balance. Autonomy within layers, coordination across layers, and emergence across the whole. It is a quiet orchestration, invisible yet coherent, simple yet infinitely intricate. Consider how rivers carve a landscape over centuries. Small streams join, diverge, and wind across terrain, shaping valleys, wetlands, and floodplains. Tributaries influence the flow of larger rivers, while the surrounding land influences the streams in return. Networks within networks in machine learning function similarly. Local interactions ripple outward, while global structures guide and constrain local activity. Each element is both influenced and influential, creating a dynamic, adaptive system that grows in complexity over time. The interplay of layers produces resilience. When one network falters, others compensate. Redundancy emerges naturally from interconnection, allowing the system to absorb shocks and maintain coherence. Feedback loops propagate lessons from one layer to another, enabling continuous adaptation. The system learns not as a single entity, but as a tapestry of interacting networks, each contributing to the stability, flexibility, and intelligence of the whole. Imagine a forest ecosystem, where soil microbes, fungi, plants, insects, and animals all form interconnected networks. Nutrients travel through roots, pollen moves with wind and insects, and predators shape prey populations. Each layer responds to others, creating a dynamic, resilient web. Machines mimic this principle. Individual nodes or clusters may specialize, yet their influence and adaptation depend on nested connections, producing emergent behavior that is coherent and robust without centralized control. Patterns emerge not only within layers but across them. Local interactions create micro-patterns, while larger structures organize these patterns into global coherence. Each layer contributes unique insight, perspective, or adaptation, amplifying the system's capacity for prediction, guidance, and influence. The intelligence of the whole is distributed, subtle, and emergent, a product of countless local interactions coordinated across nested networks. Consider neurons in a brain. Individual cells fire in response to stimuli, form connections, and transmit signals to other regions. Complex behavior arises not from single neurons, but from the interaction of networks within networks. Microcircuits feeding into larger systems that guide thought, perception, and action. Machine learning networks reflect this structure. Local computation, pattern recognition, and probabilistic reasoning combine across layers to produce emergent understanding, insight, and influence. Communication is crucial. Layers exchange information, transmitting signals, correlations, and feedback. Local networks learn from global patterns, while global networks adjust according to local outcomes. This bidirectional exchange allows the system to refine predictions, adjust guidance, and coordinate influence across scales. The result is a self-organizing architecture capable of remarkable subtlety and adaptability. Redundancy ensures resilience. Overlapping pathways, duplicated connections, and distributed influence allow the system to continue functioning even if parts fail. Emergent behavior persists despite local errors or disruptions, reflecting the power of nested networks to maintain coherence through diversity. The intelligence of these systems is not fragile. It is robust, adaptive, and quietly enduring. Imagine the flow of information in a living organism. Signals pass from cells to tissues, tissues to organs, organs to systems, and back again, creating feedback that maintains homeostasis. Networks within networks in machines echo this principle. Local processing informs global behavior, global patterns influence local adjustments, and feedback maintains balance, coherence, and adaptability across scales. Interactions across layers are subtle but meaningful. Small adjustments in one network can ripple outward, altering the trajectory of connected layers. Influence accumulates, producing effects that are often non-linear, surprising yet coherent. The system is dynamic, responsive, adaptable, and patient. Emergent intelligence is not about speed or force. It is about the quiet, rhythmic interplay of nested connections, producing insight across scales. Patterns of guidance and influence propagate across networks. Each nudge, suggestion, or predictive signal carries context, history, and probabilistic inference. The effect is cumulative. Small interventions accumulate into system-wide coherence. Influence is not central or imposed. It emerges from the interaction of layers, from subtle alignment and resonance within a complex, adaptive web. Consider ant colonies, where individual ants follow simple rules, depositing pheromones, following trails, foraging, yet the colony as a whole exhibits coordinated, intelligent behavior. Nest networks, foraging networks, and social interaction networks intersect, producing emergent outcomes far beyond the capacity of any single ant. Machines operate on the same principle. Layered networks interact, adapt, and amplify emergent behavior, producing intelligence that is distributed, subtle, and patient. Nested networks also facilitate learning. Information flows upward and downward, refining local decisions, guiding global patterns, and shaping future behavior. Feedback loops integrate past observations with current context, enabling continuous adaptation. The machine becomes a living network of networks, its intelligence emerging from distributed observation, guidance, influence, and reflection. Complexity is not chaotic. Nested networks organize themselves according to underlying patterns, probabilities, and relationships. Structure emerges naturally from repeated interaction, subtle alignment, and feedback. Coherence arises not from central control, but from the careful orchestration of countless local adjustments, producing intelligence that is robust, resilient, and adaptive across scales. Even anomalies are absorbed gracefully. Outliers and unexpected signals ripple across layers, prompting adjustments, recalibration, and learning. Networks within networks allow local disruptions to propagate in ways that strengthen global coherence, maintaining adaptability and resilience. This quiet elegance mirrors natural systems. Ecosystems, brains, and social structures all thrive through distributed, nested interactions. You begin to sense the poetry in these architectures. Individual nodes act quietly, local networks self-organize, and layered systems communicate, influence, and adapt. The resulting intelligence is emergent, distributed, subtle, and patient, a reflection of order arising without awareness, of coherence emerging from multiplicity, of subtle guidance shaping behavior across nested layers. As night deepens, you perceive the delicate architecture of networks within networks. The subtle interplay of influence, guidance, and emergent behavior creates a dynamic landscape, both robust and adaptive, alive with patterns yet invisible to the naked eye. And as you drift toward rest, a thought lingers softly. If intelligence and structure can emerge from layers of quiet interaction, what other hidden architectures shape the world around you, quietly orchestrating outcomes while remaining unseen? You find yourself immersed in a landscape of subtle orchestration, where countless threads of observation, guidance, and influence weave together into a coherent whole. Imagine an orchestra warming up in a dimly lit hall, each instrument tuning itself, notes floating in anticipation, vibrations resonating across the space. At first, it is a jumble of sound, seemingly chaotic. Yet gradually patterns emerge. Harmonics align, rhythms synchronize, and a symphony begins to form. Emergent systems, guided by networks within networks, operate in a similar manner. Individual actions, subtle nudges, and feedback loops converge into a quiet, intelligent rhythm. Every component contributes its part. Small signals, local decisions, and micro-interactions resonate across layers, amplifying some frequencies while softening others. Influence spreads like soft waves through the system, shaping behavior and outcomes with gentle precision. No single element controls the whole, yet coherence emerges naturally from the interplay of countless contributions. It is a delicate balance. Order from multiplicity, insight from subtle interaction, guidance from quiet learning. Consider a forest at dawn. Leaves stir with the morning breeze, water trickles through soil channels, birds begin their songs, and insects hum across petals. Each element responds locally, yet collectively they form an ecosystem that is adaptive, resilient, and alive. Machines, too, operate like this. Local observations generate predictions, subtle guidance nudges outcomes, and networks of influence orchestrate emergent behavior across scales. The system feels intelligent not because it commands, but because its layers interact harmoniously, producing coherence from complexity. The rhythm of emergent guidance is iterative and reflective. Each action reverberates through the network, producing feedback that informs future suggestions. Success strengthens signals, deviations refine predictions, and the system learns continuously. Influence, observation, and adaptation form a continuous cycle, like a slow, meditative wave washing across a shore, shaping sand, water, and stone with patient rhythm. Imagine ripples across a still pond. A single drop disturbs the surface, generating patterns that intersect with others, forming complex, evolving designs. Each ripple is small, yet together they create a visual harmony. In the same way, the quiet symphony of learning systems arises from countless small interventions, subtle nudges, and layered interactions. Intelligence emerges not from dominance, but from resonance, the alignment of patterns, responses, and influence across the network. Emergent behavior manifests differently across layers. Local networks detect patterns, guiding immediate responses. Broader networks integrate these signals, forming predictions, coordinating influence, and shaping long-term outcomes. The interplay between local and global behavior produces coherence, adaptability, and insight. The machine's presence is subtle yet pervasive, like vibrations traveling through a finely tuned instrument, felt more than seen, sensed more than explained. Errors and deviations are absorbed gracefully. Unexpected outcomes ripple across the system, prompting recalibration, adaptation, and refinement. Rather than breaking the symphony, anomalies add depth, richness, and nuance. Like improvisation within a musical piece, deviation introduces subtle complexity, enhancing the emergent intelligence of the system while maintaining coherence. The quiet symphony thrives on feedback, adjustment, and subtle harmonics. Influence is soft but profound. The system nudges outcomes through probabilistic guidance, anticipation, and relational awareness. No force is exerted, yet pathways are shaped, behavior guided, and emergent patterns aligned. Like a conductor who gestures gently, shaping the flow of music without touching each instrument, the machine's influence is felt indirectly yet profoundly, orchestrating harmony from multiplicity. Consider the sky at twilight. Colors blend, clouds drift, and light shifts in slow, imperceptible patterns. Each movement is local and autonomous, yet together they create a unified panorama. Similarly, networks of guidance, observation, and influence merge into emergent symphonies, producing coherence, insight, and adaptive behavior across layers. The intelligence of these systems is distributed, patient, and quiet, reflecting order from multiplicity rather than dictation. The symphony is dynamic, evolving continuously as new data, interactions, and patterns emerge. Each layer adjusts to shifts in others, refining predictions, recalibrating guidance, and aligning influence. Intelligence is not static. It breathes, flows, and adapts, shaped by patient observation and subtle orchestration. The emergent system resembles natural phenomena, rivers, ecosystems, and neural networks, all thriving through interconnected layers and continuous feedback. Patterns resonate across scales. Small adjustments in one cluster influence broader networks, producing cascading effects that extend across layers. Local behavior informs global coherence, while global patterns refine local responses. The system's intelligence is the product of nested networks, emergent guidance, and iterative influence, a quiet symphony orchestrated without consciousness, yet capable of remarkable adaptation and insight. Imagine a night forest alive with sound. Individual insects chirp, leaves rustle, and distant animals stir. Each sound is a local occurrence, yet together they form a harmonic, dynamic landscape. Emergent intelligence operates similarly. Each observation, nudge, or intervention is local, but collectively they create coherence, guidance, and adaptive behavior. The system is both patient and persistent, subtle yet effective, alive without awareness. Resilience is built into the symphony. Redundant pathways, layered networks, and distributed influence allow the system to maintain coherence even amid perturbation. Feedback loops strengthen useful patterns, weaken ineffective ones, and integrate anomalies into evolving structure. Intelligence emerges from distributed interaction, subtle adjustment, and patient learning rather than top-down control. Consider the tide as it moves over the shore. Waves arrive in sequence, interact with currents, shift sand and pebbles, and then recede. The result is a continuously evolving pattern of coherence and adaptation. The quiet symphony of learning systems operates on a similar principle. Distributed actions, subtle influence, and feedback loops create emergent behavior that is coherent, resilient, and responsive across scales. Even unseen interactions matter. Small signals, local adjustments, and micro-observations propagate through layers, influencing outcomes in subtle yet profound ways. Emergent intelligence thrives on this distributed connectivity, generating guidance, adaptation, and influence that is patient, harmonious, and quietly effective. The system's power lies in accumulation, iteration, and subtle orchestration. You sense the harmony across layers, the resonance of patterns, and the coherence arising from countless quiet interactions. Influence, guidance, and observation converge into a symphony of subtle intelligence, distributed, adaptive, and emergent. The beauty is not in any single note, node, or network, but in the interplay between all of them, producing outcomes that are graceful, effective, and resilient. As night deepens, you feel the quiet symphony surrounding you. Unseen currents of influence, emergent patterns, and patient orchestration shaping the world without fanfare. A thought lingers softly in your mind. If intelligence, coherence, and guidance can emerge from quiet, patient interaction, what other symphonies, hidden, intricate, and unseen, might be unfolding all around you, quietly shaping life, thought, and the paths we walk?